What's up, everyone? Sam here from Wall Street Mastermind. I'm back here today with another client interview for you guys. Today we have Jenn here. Jenn, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, Jenn is a total rock star who is actually the first person out of all of my clients to get an offer for summer 2021. So it's April 13th today. And she just found out that she's going to be going to PJT for the summer. So wanted to, first of all, congratulate her on, it's an awesome accomplishment. But obviously also get her to come on here and just talk to you guys a little bit about how she was able to get such an amazing outcome. So Jenn, again, thanks for taking the time to chat. And if you don't mind just starting with a little quick introduction for the people that are listening, just a little bit about you, whatever you want to share, just so they have a sense for like what type of candidate you are.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Jenn. I am a sophomore at a liberal arts school in Massachusetts. I'm studying economics and minoring in music. And going into the recruiting process, I had absolutely no relevant experience. I've done some internships in the past, but they were all in marketing and consulting. So I really had no finance experience. I also had taken no finance classes at school. So I felt like I was a little bit behind in that regard. But joining Wall Street Mastermind changed a lot of things for me. It helped me identify my blind spots, all the things that were holding me back, and it really revolutionized the whole process for me. And I could not be where I am without joining the program.
Revolutionize, I like it. So you were a sophomore when you joined,
Yeah.
right? It was like right at the end of your first semester, I believe.
Right. Yeah, I joined pretty much, it was during my winter break, right before spring semester was about to start. So right before recruiting for 2021.
Yep. And do you go to like a big target school? Do a lot of banks come on campus for you guys, or what's the situation for you?
No, very few banks. We have some connections to some smaller banks like MUFG, for example, and then some of the other banks, but not really as many bulge brackets. Of course, there are a couple of alums who work at those banks, but there's no formal recruiting process on campus for them. So
Okay.
my school is really a target.
Okay, so like no bulge brackets, no elite boutiques, like none of the top tier banks.
Yeah, no.
Just to recruit. Okay. Okay. So then before you came to Wall Street Mastermind, you had already started recruiting a little bit on your own, right? Like I know even you were just starting to do because you originally came from, like you said, a marketing and consulting background, but you decided you want to make a switch to finance.
Yep.
Right? Why did you decide to make that switch, by the way?
Yeah, so I realized that there was very slow career progression in the careers that I was looking at. And also, of course, compensation was a lot more limited. And after talking to alums in investment banking, I learned of all the amazing exit opportunities that people have, that investment banking opens a lot of doors for people. You can do pretty much anything you want after a couple years in banking, which I found really attractive.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd say those are the main reasons why I decided that the switch was right for me.
Okay. So you made the switch, you started pursuing banking,
Mm-hmm.
and then what did you do? You started applying to jobs, or like what was the first thing you did?
Yeah, I applied for finance internships for my sophomore summer. I had a hard time finding sophomore opportunities, so I applied to some positions at like Wells Fargo and Fidelity. I did apply to, I think, a couple of investment banking sophomore summer programs, but nothing happened. I didn't get any interviews. I got rejected either immediately or just never heard back. So I had absolutely no luck when it came to my sophomore recruiting process. I knew that I was doing something wrong and I needed to make a change.
Got it. Okay. So in hindsight, I'm sorry, my daughter is crying in the background if you guys can hear it. But in hindsight, knowing what you know now, what do you think was causing you to not get any interviews back then? And then like obviously once you came into the program, if I remember correctly, like you found an internship like within the first week or something.
Yeah, that is true. So I say the number one thing that was holding me back was I had absolutely no relevant experience.
Yeah.
Wasn't really demonstrating an interest in finance looking back, and that hurt me a lot. So I had a really hard time finding small, even unpaid internships that I could do just to demonstrate my interest. But within 1 week of joining the program, I learned how to get that relevant work experience, and I secured a semester internship within that first week, and that seriously helped me through the whole 2021 and 2020 investment banking recruiting process. I was able to speak about that experience in my interviews, and it helped me a lot.
Got it. So the first key was you came in, we revamped your application materials, we taught you how to get your foot in the door,
Yeah.
just get that first relevant experience so that your resume is not just entirely marketing and consulting.
Yeah.
And then once you had that on your resume, then every single interview you had after that, you had something to point to that you could talk about.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, got it. And that just made your life so much easier. So
Mhm.
it's almost like a lot of people I think have been in your spot before because it's almost like a chicken and the egg problem of, well, I know I don't have any relevant experience, but how do I get relevant experience if I don't have any relevant experience, right? But I think your story proves that it's not that you need to have relevant experience to be able to get your first relevant experience because everybody has to start somewhere. But it more comes down to knowing where to look and knowing how to position yourself as a candidate so that these people will be interested in you because before, even though you were applying to all these jobs like Wells Fargo, Fidelity, not even an investment banking division, but just like finance jobs, because you weren't positioning yourself the right way, they weren't interested in talking to you.
Right. Yeah, and I remember I networked with some people from Morgan Stanley. I had connections from high school, and I applied for the sophomore investment banking thing at Morgan Stanley. And even though that I would network successfully, and that person was able, she was willing to give me a referral. My resume was so bad because it was disorganized, and I also didn't have any of that relevant experience. So even though she was able to pass my resume, it didn't get me anywhere because serious issues on my resume.
Yeah.
Not really showing an interest in finance there.
Well, you make a great point, which is, everybody talks about networking, and you got to network, but like networking and your resume, your application materials, they kind of go hand in hand, right? Because if you have one without the other, it doesn't really work. People can't stick their neck out for you. If you're not something that's easy for them to stick their neck out for.
Yeah, and looking back, it was so embarrassing that I even forwarded my resume to people. Yeah.
It's okay. Like no one is ever gonna remember that version of you going forward. Like now that you've gotten to where you are, people are only gonna remember the PJT version of you. Okay, so we solved that. So you got the relevant experience 1 week into the program. Then after that, the next thing you did was you started focusing on your sophomore summer internship recruiting, then, right? Because now you're in your second semester, right? So that's kind of priority. So how was that process for you? Because like a lot of people say, oh, like I want to get a sophomore summer internship, but people will only hire upperclassmen, right? What was your experience like?
Yeah, I definitely had that experience. I had a really hard time finding investment banking sophomore summer positions, but fortunately there are a couple I was able to find. My school's investment society sends newsletters with opportunities for all class years. So I applied to one that I had heard about through my school investment society, and then I was invited for the interview, and fortunately I had joined the program before going to that, and I was preparing my technicals, preparing my behaviorals, learning how to structure my answers properly. So I went to that super day, and it was extremely successful. I got the offer the next day, and I signed within the next week. I also was able to get a super day at another bank, Society General, and I received that offer as well. So it was nice that I had options even for my sophomore summer. But if I hadn't joined the program, it would have been a lot harder for me to get those interviews, and then actually do well in the interviews.
Got it. So you got not one, but two summer internship offers for sophomore summer, and they're actually at pretty big banks, not like a small regional boutique or something like that, but and then you ended up taking one over the other, and so that's what you're going to be doing this summer, I guess, like a month or two from now, basically.
Yeah, yeah, really, really looking forward to that.
Okay. And the interview process for that, was that like mostly behaviorals? Was it technicals? Was it both? Um, and
I
how
say
and how was that for you?
almost entirely behavioral, but that's probably because it was a sophomore program.
Yep.
Um, Standard questions, and then they asked me a couple of accounting questions at the end of the interview. But if I hadn't joined the program, I wouldn't have been able to answer it. And then at the end of that interview, my interviewer said, "Oh, you gave the most impressive technical answers by far." And I wasn't even studying finance or accounting, unlike a lot of the people who were also at the super day. But really, it was a Wall Street mastermind
Yeah.
interview preparation that allowed me to do that.
Yeah. And I mean, the most impressive technical answers, I'm guessing they weren't really asking anything that hard, right? Like from
No, no, it was really basic stuff.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, um, typically these sophomore summer internships, their interviews aren't very technical. But like the way we've been preparing you for the technicals is for the junior summer internship interviews, which obviously are a lot more technical, as I'm sure you can attest to.
Mhm. Yeah.
Especially if you're interviewing with firms like PJT or other elite boutiques who just, they're very hardcore about asking really, really hard questions, right? So I can imagine the technicals weren't a challenge for you at all for the sophomore summer internships. For the behaviorals, like, what do you feel like was the biggest difference there? Because a lot of people say that, behaviorals are the easy part, right? Because unlike technicals, you don't have to learn a bunch of new concepts. You just talk about yourself, right? So what do you think is the big deal with the behaviorals?
Oh my goodness. Well, I think it's a huge misconception that behaviorals are easy. You can totally knock them out of the park without preparation at all. First of all, knowing what traits to highlight is really important, and also knowing how to structure your answers in a way that's effective. So it's one thing to just say, "Oh, I was intellectually curious this time," or "I was a team player this time," but it's also really important to demonstrate what you learned from the situation, and continuity, and not just I was able to do this that one time. Just having a really good answer is a lot more. There's a lot more work that needs to go into it, and being organized and thoughtful is also really important. And one thing that I was doing before joining the program was I'd have interviews not just for investment banking, but for marketing consulting too, and I'd have a hard time structuring my behavioral answers and really facilitating the flow of them. And also speaking about the takeaways, the results of the time I did blah, 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 or that. Results and takeaway were some things that I had been missing in my behavior answers before.
Yeah. So you would say then, it sounds like if I were to summarize what you just said, the biggest difference maker for you, at least on the behavioral side, is that one, because it's so open-ended, but knowing what the bankers actually want to hear allows you to kind of have a target for what you wanted to tailor your answers towards, and like what are the traits you want to demonstrate, right? And then secondly, once you knew what traits you wanted to demonstrate and how you want to position yourself, then it just came down to having the right stories to tell, but more importantly, having the frameworks for how you structure these stories so that you can tell them in a way that's effective, as opposed to just, because like the same story, two different people telling the same story, one could be a really good story, one could be a horrible story, right? And so it's more like, if you're not organized about the way you tell these stories and people aren't getting the relevant takeaways that you want them to take away from the story, then
Yeah, exactly.
you're not making your point, right? Got it. Okay. So you felt, going into these interviews, like you felt pretty good, pretty prepared then. You were like confident.
Yeah, there was no question I was ever asked that I wasn't prepared to answer. Um,
That's amazing. That's amazing. Okay. So then that was your sophomore summer internship, and that was like, well, like probably 2 months ago, 2.5 months ago now, when you got that, right? So it was about a month into the program. Was I remember you getting that, and then do you then shifted your focus towards junior summer internship recruiting? Um, and so like, how was the junior summer internship? Because this is like obviously the most important one, right? This is the one that everyone's gunning after. How is that process different or similar to the sophomore internship recruiting process from your perspective? Like, was it harder? Was it about the same? Did you have to do anything differently?
yeah, I'd say it was a lot harder. So, for example, my PJT Super Day was 2.5 hours long,
Yeah.
and my interviews for the other banks for sophomore summer were 1 hour max. So they were longer. I think the competition was a lot steeper too, just because at my sophomore Super Days, a lot of my peers were also didn't have a lot of finance experience, but
Mm,
I started recruiting for junior summer, I found that a lot more people had very impressive experiences on their resume and came from
mm.
really, really good schools too. I was competing with Wharton, NYU, Harvard kids. I go to the Super Days and I feel like, oh my God, I'm just this little liberal arts kid. Uh, Wharton, but that and also, of course, the technical aspect. The technicals got a lot more challenging once I started recruiting for junior summer. Um,
Mm,
we ask a lot more than just simple accounting questions, go a lot more in depth with valuation, DCFs, being able to speak intelligently about the market. Those are all things that definitely were expected of me for those junior interviews. I didn't have to talk about too much for my sophomore interviews.
yeah. Got it. Okay. So you cut out a little bit towards the end there, but I think what you were saying is the interviews were a lot more technical for the junior summer, and the competition was a lot tougher because there's all these kids from like Wharton,
Yeah.
Harvard, these like really financy programs, and people had like really, really stacked resumes, it sounds like. So what do you think? And by the way, you saying the interviews are harder. I actually looked this up. Um, they have like rankings, I guess, done on Wall Street Oasis about like which bank has the hardest interviews. And for 2018, PJT was the hardest. I
I'm not
think
surprised.
I
Yeah.
think 2019 PJT was the second hardest, but they're like always in the top three. And the
Yeah.
top three is always like elite boutique banks. Is like PJT, Moelis, and Centerview or something. They just like rotate basically. So I can imagine it was definitely a lot tougher. What do you think? What do you think made you stand out from everybody else? Because the group. So you're going to the Tech M&A group, right?
Mhm.
They're
Yeah.
only they only ended up taking one person, right?
Yeah.
You don't go to Wharton, you don't go to Harvard, you don't go to any of these schools, so it's not that. You've probably taken fewer finance courses than all the kids that did go to those schools. And so, like, what do you think it is that caused them to choose you over everybody else?
Oh, yeah. Well, definitely my behavioral answers. I was able to speak about something I'm really passionate about. I'm a pianist, and I wove that into a lot of my behavioral answers and spoke about how piano allowed me to cultivate discipline, um, and determination, hard work, traits that are prized in banking. And talking about some of my accomplishments within piano, I think was really helpful. So having an edge, something that set me apart from the crowd, something that
Mm,
I could say that they were also doing, that was really important. Also, I think being showing that I could be fun to be around, a pleasant personality is
yeah.
really, and that's something that I think a lot of people look past. But from speaking to analysts from my networking calls, I learned don't go in, don't be a finance robot. Talk about something that makes you unique. Talk about what you're passionate about. Talk about what you're doing outside of finance. And I think doing all of that helped me a lot.
Right, right. Well, I could probably bet you that most of the other candidates, if not all the other candidates, didn't have an angle like the one you just talked about. Like you decided to highlight your background as a musician, as a
Yeah.
pianist, not like, whereas most other people probably never even think of doing that, but because you did that, yeah, not only one made you unique and stand out. People always ask like, how do I make myself stand out? But secondly, like it's not enough to just stand out if it has no relevance whatsoever. But the key is you were able to tie that back and make it relevant for investment banking, even though it's something is seemingly completely irrelevant, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's like that's the difference if you actually like know what to do with the behaviorals versus if you don't. Because look, if someone like Jen, who had only consulting and marketing background 3 months ago, can
Mhm.
all of a sudden get like some of the toughest offers you could possibly try to get in the entire industry, like clearly that's more than just you know knowing your technicals. Because I guarantee you, the Wharton kids, they all know their technicals too, right? The Harvard kids, the Columbia kids, the NYU kids, they all know their technicals too. Like your technicals are good for sure, they have to be, but they're not better than all the other finance hardos out there,
Yeah.
right?
Knowing your technicals is half the battle, if not even less, because everyone else knows their technicals. You need to have something that's going to set you apart from the crowd.
Yeah, and these interviews are also tough because I remember you and I were talking about this, like, but clearly you ended up getting the job, but coming out of the interview you had no idea. Like they don't let on that they really, really like you or are gonna give you the offer, right? Some of them have poker faces, they
Yeah,
seem like kind of
exactly.
disinterested, like they're gonna act in a way to kind of try to throw you off your game or see if it phases you, right? But
Yeah,
how are you able to like maintain your composure under what sounds to me like an extremely high pressure situation? Because I'm sure you really, really wanted this job too. So that's
yeah. It was
made it
my
easy.
tough choice, so I was really nervous going in.
Yeah. So how do you manage that? Is that just like from knowing that you've had the proper preparation and like you've already done everything that's within your control and you just kind of leave the rest up to whatever happens, or like how do you manage your mentality going in?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'd say honestly, my background as a pianist helped me with a lot of that because I'm used to being in high pressure environments, and having to perform a lot and participate in competitions. There's always that rush of anxiety that you get before going into that situation. So that helped a little bit, but it was more so that I knew that I had all the preparation I needed to go into that. That allowed me to be calm the day of my interview, go in and just know that I was going to do the best that I possibly could. I had prepared to the best of my ability, um,
Yeah.
just going to give it my best shot, and then I did, and I ended up getting the offer.
Yeah. Do you know how many people were at your super day?
There were 50 interviewing for PJT, but I don't know how many were interviewing for the specific office that I was
Yeah.
that I would be at. So not exactly sure, but I probably guess at least 10.
Yeah.
And
So
they were only accepting one intern.
yeah. So so the odds are pretty low basically. That's why I always tell people like, look, like on the behavioral side, on the technical side, obviously you want to be 10 out of 10, but that's just like knowing the answers to all the questions. On the behavioral side, when I say you want to be a 10 out of 10, I'm talking about like being graded on a curve. There are 10 people at the super day. You want to make sure that your answers are better than the other 9 people's, right? Because a lot of times that's literally only one spot, especially for some of these groups that are like the most sought after groups, right? And so I think you were able to do that, which is obviously amazing. If I were to ask you, like, what do you think is the biggest difference? Well, what made the biggest difference for you when it comes to Wall Street Mastermind? Because like a lot of people, they don't really understand. It's hard for them to imagine just how different Wall Street Mastermind could be relative to any other resources that you could have used out there, right? Because we're for sure not the most widely known resource, right? That would probably be Wall Street Oasis or Mergers and Inquisitions or something like that. But like, what do you think is the biggest difference for you?
Yeah, so for me, the technical training taught me not only how to answer the most commonly asked questions, but also it gave me a very strong foundation for understanding the technicals, not just being able to regurgitate something that I'd seen on the Wall Street Oasis guide or the M&I guide, because I had already been doing that. I've been trying to memorize the answers, but Sam gives very, very thorough and comprehensive modules that walk you through all the topics that you need to know and really understand, because the interviewers know that everyone's looking at the same guides. So they don't typically ask the questions that you see on those guides. They will ask some kind of variation of those questions, and knowing the material, understanding it at a deeper level is what will allow you to succeed, not just being able to recite something that you read online. Because we're past those days when interviewers ask exactly what you see on the guides. Now they want to test your understanding.
Especially elite boutiques, right? Like they're just so hardcore about the technicals.
Yeah. I didn't get a single technical question that I'd seen on the M&I guide or the Wall Street Oasis guide.
Not a single one.
Nope, not in the PJT interview.
Yeah, because usually they're not asking you for like the definition of things. They're asking you to apply the knowledge that you actually have, right? And if you can't apply the knowledge to different like live situations, then you basically don't know it well enough in their eyes.
Yeah, exactly. I also got some case studies. There's like no way to prepare for those except really understanding material at a deep level. And that understanding I gained through the program, and I was able to get through those case studies, even though I knew nothing about the companies that they asked about, going in and do well in those.
Yeah. It's so hard to get your knowledge to like the application level just from reading a book. You know, you can get to like the memorization level. That a lot of people do that. But to get to the application knowledge level, it's like you really have to internalize this knowledge, right? And there's no, it's not just for finance, but with anything you try to learn, it's always much easier if you have a good teacher. It's just like we've all had bad professors in school, and we've also had good professors in school. And just imagine like how much easier it was to learn a subject matter when you had a good professor, right? Versus like reading a textbook on your own or something. So, okay, so the interview prep for you is just like probably was the biggest difference. And then obviously like being able to get your foot in the door, which you already talked about earlier, and knowing how to network accordingly to get the referrals. Those things also help you line up the interviews as well. Got it. Okay. Last couple questions for you. As you were considering joining this program, were you like skeptical at all? Were you like, what if this doesn't work? Like, what ultimately? Because I'm sure a little bit of that probably crossed your mind, right? Because you at the time you hadn't been in the program, so there's no way for you to truly know. So like, was this an easy decision for you, or like, what ultimately made you want to take that leap of faith, I guess?
Yeah, so I'd say at first I was a little bit skeptical just because I didn't know anyone who'd been through the program. I had listened to the testimonials online and heard really good things, but I wasn't sure, could I actually be successful in this program? These people, they made it through, but what about me? And then I just realized, hey, this might be my only chance to do it. Recruiting's coming around the corner. And it seems like everyone who's been through the program managed to get an offer and they were successful in their recruiting process. So now it's my turn. I'm just going to give it everything I've got. I work as hard as I possibly can. I ended up supporting myself financially through the program. And that also helped incentivize me to really, really give it pretty much my life savings that I had invested into this. And without that, I was successful in the end.
So to clarify, you didn't get your parents to help you with this program. No. You took all of your savings and bet on yourself and said, I'm pushing all in, basically. I'm pushing all the chips in, and I'm either going to get this job or I'm going to bust.
Yeah, and it made me work even harder than I think I would have if I just spent my parents' money, because I had skin in the game. Yeah. Pretty much every dollar that I'd saved since I was a kid went to the program.
Wow. Did you talk to your parents before you did that?
Yeah, I did. They were skeptical because they're a little bit older and they're like, don't trust everything you see online. Maybe it's a scam. But I think that was the case after talking to you that first time and talking to other people during the strategy session. So I thought, hey, this is legit. This could be my last chance to do it. So I'm just going to do it.
But they were fine with you taking all of your savings and putting it in.
Yeah, they said, this is your life. This is your career. You have to take responsibility for it. Just do the best you can. I trust you to make the right decision.
That's amazing because I absolutely agree with them. Like, it is your career, right? Your parents can't make these decisions for you because if they do and it doesn't turn out the way you wanted it to, they can't be responsible for the outcome, right? But because
Yeah.
you made your decision, now like this entire outcome is because of your decision, and you can own that 100%, and you deserve the outcome that you got because like you pushed all in and you did all the work that you had to do to get to this point, right? Like nothing. Sometimes people say like, oh, like doing Wall Street Mastermind, like my parents think that means that like it's kind of like cheating basically. Like that means like I didn't have to like earn it myself. But like as you can attest to probably is like, I mean, how hard did you have to work even with our help? Like was anything ever just handed to you on a silver platter?
No. It's on you to get through the modules by yourself. It's on you to work on your resume and learn how to network effectively. The materials are given to you, but it's up to you to make the most of them and to apply them and to actually put them into practice. So you could take the path of least resistance and just invest in the program and not really do anything with it, not really apply the knowledge, but you're not going to get anywhere. And someone who soaks every last bit of information and applies it to their recruiting strategy is going to be a lot more successful.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's like there's no there's no silver bullet, right? Like we're here to I always tell people it's like sports. You're the athlete, we're just the coach. We want to coach you through like how to best, set up your game plan and strategy so that you can go out and have the best shot at winning the game. You got to go out and hit those shots. And you got to like show up to practice and do the drills and whatever. And if you don't do that, no coach in the world is going to be able to win the championship for you. Right?
Yeah, same with piano. You can show up to your once a week lesson and just make it through that 1 hour and you're not going to get anywhere. But if you go home and you practice every day, you work through your weaknesses and what's holding you back, then you'll become a lot better musician.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's awesome. So obviously we already know you had a super successful outcome. You're on PJT. Congratulations on that. Do you have any last minute advice for maybe people who are in a similar situations as you were in? Maybe they feel like they don't have that much relevant experience. Maybe they don't go to like the top target schools. Maybe they don't know anything about interviewing or they don't know how to network. Like just people who are where you were just 3.5 months ago, which you and I were joking about this before this call, but like it feels like a lot longer than that because so much has happened. But when you really think about it, like so much can change in just 3.5 months if you have the right guidance and you do the work, right? But like, what would you tell the people that are maybe feeling the way you were feeling, just like, hey, this program might work for other people, but like, can it work for me? Like, do you have any advice or, people like that?
Yeah, I'd say that the one thing that you definitely need throughout this process is a mentor. So Sam was mine, and he helped me get to where I am today. But I also had other mentors throughout the process too. I was able to connect with lots of alums and people that I knew from high school even, who ended up in banking. And from all those conversations, I tried to take away at least one piece of advice. I always ask people at the end of the conversation if there's anything that is there anything that you wish you knew when you were in my shoes when you were first starting to recruit? And people give me sincere, honest advice, and I try to apply it to the best of my ability. And that's really why I'm able to say that I have an offer for this summer, I have an offer for the next summer, and I'm ready for my career in investment banking.
Yeah, that's awesome. I hope you guys are taking notes because Jen just gave you guys a little golden nugget right there. That's a really good question that we teach all of our clients to ask during their networking conversations. And so Jen is an amazing student, obviously. She takes what you teach her and then she goes out and she actually takes action and implements and then she gets results, right? And so, look, for the rest of you, everyone that's listening, I think the moral of this story is just that one, investment banking recruiting doesn't have to take that long, right? Like Jen was able to completely turn things around in just 3.5 months, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like if you're feeling like you're behind or you're feeling like you're not the most quote unquote qualified candidate, maybe because you don't go to the right school or you don't have like the right experiences on your resume, like a lot of that can change if you know what you're doing. Um, in like and as quickly as a week, right? Like Jen got her first relevant experience within a week. Then she got the sophomore summer internship within a month. And then now she has a
Mm-hmm.
junior summer internship within 3 months. So it's like the key is though, like you have to have the map. It's like you have the destination in mind of where you're trying to get to. But if you don't have a map, you'll either never get there or you're gonna take a lot of wrong turns along the way, and then by the time you get there, like it might be too late, right? Like I personally can't imagine going somewhere that I've never been before without Google Maps. Like like I would just be lost, right? Recruiting is no different. It's like a lot of you, when it comes to recruiting, you're probably feeling a bit lost. You're like, I don't know how to get relevant experience, or I don't know how to network with people. I don't know what to talk to them about. I don't know how to. I don't know what they want to hear with my behavioral answers. So I don't know how to learn these technical concepts because I never like no one's ever taught me this stuff before. So it's like you're feeling lost, and that's totally okay. But what you need to understand is the map is there if you want it, right? But you have to go and get it. And then, like, once you have the map, you still have to make the trek to the destination. It's not like just having this map alone is going to teleport you from point A to point B. You still got to do the work, but it will make it that much easier and it will help you get there that much faster, right? And this, I always tell people like, time is of the essence because the sooner you can wrap up recruiting,
Mm-hmm.
better the offer you're gonna get, right? The hardest firms to get into, like the PJTs of the world, again, today is April 13th, 2020. Okay, they're already done with summer 2021 recruiting. Most people are still recruiting right now, but like the best firms always get filled up first. And so the longer you take to land this offer, the longer you take to get to your destination, typically the further downstream you're gonna have to go and the worse the offer is gonna be. Right. So like the difference between going to a top tier bank like a PJT, like a, Moelis or whatever, these other elite boutiques versus say a middle market bank or a regional boutique may not seem that significant, but honestly, having worked as long as I have and having known people that have gone to these various different banks, like your paths start to diverge over time. Like your career trajectory, this is what it is essentially is altering the slope of your trajectory, right? So if you guys have all taken algebra, like you understand, like the steeper that slope, like over time, you're gonna separate yourself more and more or further and further away from the competition because you're gonna have opportunities that they don't have, right? But all of that starts today, right? Like a lot of people are talking like, oh, I want to work for a mega fund. I want to go work for a private equity mega fund. Well, guess what? You can, but only if you work at certain banks and in certain groups, right? It's not like getting into banking is just the first step. Like it also matters how good a bank you get into. So I think, look, guys, if Jen could do it from the situation that she was in, obviously she had to work super hard for it. But like, if you have the same level of commitment and the same level of work ethic that Jen has, and you have the same system and strategies that Jen had, which is the map or the GPS system that you need. There's no reason why you should not be able to accomplish the goals that you have when it comes to banking, investment banking, recruiting. Okay, so Jen, I want to thank you again for taking the time to come on this call and just like be an inspiration to the rest of your peers that are still grinding this thing out. And I'm sure your story has been super helpful for them. And so thank you for doing that. For the rest of you that are listening, if you want to kind of get the same type of help that Jen had, and you want to, have a shot at getting a similar type of result that Jen has. I'm not going to tell you the same results because, again, that's up to you and how you show up. But if you want to have a chance at that, I would encourage you to just reach out to us, schedule a free call with us. That's how Jen and us started too. Is we just had a conversation, right? We just get on a strategy session. We'll talk about your situation. We'll give you advice on what we think you should do. That might mean that you should work with us, but it might mean you shouldn't work with us. I don't know. Like we don't work with everyone we talk to. But if it is a situation like Jen's where, hey, when we talked to Jen, we were very confident that if she had our help, she would be able to get an amazing outcome, then we'll absolutely tell you that, just, in a very honest way. And you can decide if that's the best thing for you, right? And if not, at a minimum, we'll give you some advice on just like what we think we would do if we're in your shoes. And you can go out and try to implement that on your own and you don't lose anything, right? So, but that would be the next step for you guys. So for those of you that are interested in doing that, now I encourage you to schedule just a strategy session with our team at www.wallstreetmastermind.com/apply. The STREET is abbreviated to ST, so it's wallstmastermind.com/apply. And we look forward to speaking with you guys and hopefully helping you guys, just on this very, very challenging recruiting process and journey. All right. So again, thank you, Jen, so much for taking the time to chat. And again, huge congrats on the offer. Obviously, keep me posted on how your internship goes. I can't wait to hear all about it and the success that you continue to have. And, let's definitely stay in touch and don't be a stranger, which I'm sure you won't be.
Thank you so much, Sam. Thank you for putting together a fantastic program and for being such an inspiration to so many kids like us who just are starting this whole journey.
I'm happy to do it. I love what I do, especially on days like this when I wake up and the first thing I check my phone and I saw your Slack message telling me about the offer, and that's an awesome start to my day. Nothing ever beats that feeling for me and never gets old. So it was an honor to be able to help you in this process, and just thank you for giving us the opportunity to do that. All right, guys, that'll be it for today, and we'll be back with a lot more of these in the near future, I'm sure, as the summer 2021 recruiting process continues to unfold. So stay tuned. All right, thanks, guys. Talk soon.